The U.S. Treasury just borrowed $1 trillion. What the heck is going on? Yeah, you heard that right. The U.S. Treasury is set to borrow $1 trillion just for quarter number 3 of 2025. Now, we're going to talk about why they're doing it and if you should panic or not. But before we do, my name is Rick. I help you turn daily news into daily profits. If that's something you're interested in, make sure you hit that follow button. Now, here's what's even more interesting. Not only is the Treasury going to borrow $1 trillion for quarter number 3 to cover rising deficits, but it says that the Federal Reserve is not going to print more money as it's looking to do quantitative tightening. So basically the Federal Reserve is saying, hey, Treasury, if you need $1 trillion, cool, but we're not printing that off for you. Now, why exactly does the Treasury need to borrow $1 trillion and is this common? Well, the Federal Reserve has to keep cash on hand in preparation for the upcoming quarters in order to be able to cover expenses. Sometimes they borrow a little bit less, sometimes they borrow a little bit more. In this case, they feel like they're going to need a whole heck of a lot of money to cover what's coming in quarter number 3 of 2025, so they want to have more cash on hand. Now, taking out too much money isn't always a bad thing because let's say that you spent more money unexpectedly in quarter number 1 and quarter number 2. Well, you would want to have a little bit more cash on hand for quarter number 3 just in case. So think about what they're doing like a balancing act. We basically have to make sure that we have enough money in reserves to get through whatever quarter number 3 of 2025 throws at us. And keep in mind that the United States Treasury has a lot of financial obligations like federal programs and benefits. Then you have defense and military, and then covering interest payments. There's a lot of financial obligation happening with the Treasury at all times. So basically what they're doing is preparing for what could be a pretty costly quarter for 2025. But what exactly happens when they borrow money like this? Well, the first thing that happens is there's more debt in circulation. And then if there's more debt in circulation, we have to find ways as a government to pay back that debt, meaning that we're probably going to have to raise interest rates. And those interest rates impact everybody across the board, including consumers and businesses. And now, since there's more debt in circulation, we're going to have to pay back that debt. So now the revenue coming from taxpayers like me and you, more of that revenue goes toward interest payments of the debt that we just took out. Now, before you panic, this is actually very common. The Treasury has to keep money on hand at all times. And they usually like to keep around $500 billion, sometimes more, sometimes less, depending on what exactly is going on for that quarter and what they're planning on spending money on. Although I will say $1 trillion is one of the biggest borrowing pulls I've ever seen from the Treasury. So basically the Treasury needs to borrow $1 trillion and the Fed's telling them no. And that's to shore up finances. And how do they raise that money exactly? They issue bonds that banks, institutions, and people can buy. And all of this is part of the balancing act that the U.S. Treasury is constantly doing.